And good afternoon and welcome to Cool Springs. Today is Wednesday, August the 7th, 2024, and this is our series God Conversations. And today I chose a spoon as the object lesson. I actually thought about doing this one when I was at lunch today. The restaurant that I was having lunch at gave me silverware, but they only gave me the knife and the fork. And a lot of times now you may notice when you go to restaurants that that's all the silverware that you'll get because they're trying to save money on dishwashing costs. Particularly the bigger corporations, they actually have people whose job it is to figure out how to save every possible penny of cost to gain more profit margin. And somebody figured out years ago that walking into a restaurant and automatically giving people water as well as them ordering whatever drink they may want, was costing them dishwashing time and dishwashing liquid and costing them extra ice and all other kinds of little details. So all of a sudden, poof, you started going to restaurants and they didn't automatically set a glass of water in front of you. Now you ask for water in addition to coffee or tea, soda, whatever it is you're going to be drinking. Same kind of thing is happening with spoons, and it got me to thinking about that. Because you see, the spoon is the first instrument that most people, when they're very young children, learn to eat with. When you're a very young infant, you're either breastfeeding or you're being bottle fed. Why? Because you don't have teeth yet. And then as you learn to start to sit in the high chair and you learn to hold the spoon and mom, dad, grandma, whoever it is feeding you, offers you the spoon, even that early, you're going to reach for it with either your left hand, the one I'm using, or your right hand. And sometimes it's an indication very, very early on of whether you're going to be left-handed, like me, or whether you're going to be right-handed. Sometimes it's just a case of very early you're grabbing with either hand because you don't know yet, but by the time you're old enough, say 2 or 3, to be handed coloring books and paste crayons and pieces of paper to scribble on, now you're beginning to show a preference for one hand or the other. But when you're first learning to eat, you're eating soft stuff because your chewing skills aren't yet up to par. And so that baby formula or that soft food, like, mashed potatoes or applesauce or creamed, pureed peas, whatever's in the baby food jar, you're being spoon-fed. And so that's the first instrument you learn to handle. Later on, you learn how to use a fork, and later on after that, you learn how to use a knife, and the knife is the more dangerous one. That's the one you learn last, because you could hurt yourself with a knife. Actually, you can hurt yourself with a fork too, or you can stab your brother or sister if you're having an argument at the table because of the tines that are on the fork. So most restaurants now, to save money, are just giving people a knife and a fork. And most things you can eat using just those two. But if you're going to eat soup or something like ice cream that's not in the cone variety, you're going to need the spoon. But even though they'll give you a fork and a knife, depending upon what's on your plate, you might have an easier time eating the food if you use the spoon instead of the fork. For example, corn, if it's not corn on the cob, if it's whole kernel corn or cream corn, or if it's mashed potatoes, something like that. Yeah, you could eat it with a fork, but some of it might fall off and spill onto the table, onto your clothes, various things. It's easier to use the spoon. So today, what I was eating, they gave me a knife and fork, and I thought about asking for a spoon, but I decided, nah, I'll just be real careful, and I'll just go ahead and eat with a fork and knife. And the way you can talk to your kids about it is the spoon's the earliest instrument that you used to use, and sometimes it's the best instrument to use. And they're going to discover as they grow up and go through life that sometimes one tool will work better than another one to accomplish some task, or that somebody is more gifted and talented in one area than another. And it doesn't mean that one is better than the other or worse, just that they're different and that they each have a purpose. The spoon has a purpose that in some cases only it can really do. If I'm eating the mashed potatoes, I'd much rather use a spoon. If I'm having cereal for breakfast, I really want to use a spoon because I want not only the cereal, but I want the milk. Whereas if I use a fork, yeah, I can eat the cereal and it'll be a little bit soggy because it's been in the milk. But is the milk going to stay on the fork? Nah. So you can teach them to appreciate the value and the different design and the different functions that God has not only for things like spoons and tools and machines, but that God has a purpose for each of our lives, and that we've each been designed to do things, and some of the things that we've been designed to do, God wants us to do it, and if we don't and somebody else has to do it, they may not be as gifted. There are people in our church who can sing and play musical instruments and do things with technology and fix stuff and do things like cut the grass and figure out what to do when the air conditioning goes out, or when the internet isn't working right, or when something gets broke, how to put it together. And there are people who can teach the kids. And there are people who can sit comfortably in front of the camera, whereas others don't want anything to do with doing these kinds of tasks. Do whatever it is that God has called you to do. Follow whatever design God has for you. Spoons are good things. We can use them in ways that we can't really use a knife and a fork. And aren't we glad we've got them all? Thanks for watching.